800 44 42 44. Thank you.
Now then, I was speaking to the Conservative Chancellor George Osborne just before the break. You may have seen he's promised a revolution in home ownership if the Conservatives win the election, and once again pointed to the chaos he says Labour will cause if it gets into power. I'm joined now by Labour's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. He is Chris Leslie. And a very good morning to you, Mr. Leslie. Now, first of all, I want to pick up on this because you wanted some straight answers to straight questions. I wanted it too about Conservative spending and taxation plans. And the Chancellor seeming to rule out the issue of cutting the 45p higher rate. He said he had no plans.
Well, look, it was interesting, wasn't it? I just heard the Chancellor, and it was 2 years ago that he decided it was a priority for people earning over £150,000 a year to cut that rate of income tax from 50p to 45p, even though the deficit has been considerable. When you asked him a moment ago, he repeated that same formula, I have no plans. Well, of course, that's the same formula he had before the last general election when he said, oh, we have no plans on VAT, and of course they did it. I think what you've managed to do here is flush out the Chancellor. Their priority is always about helping the very richest in society. Since that tax cut was made 2 years ago, if you were earning £1 million a year, maybe not on your salary, but if you were earning £1 million a year, you've had a tax cut of £85,000 in value. Now contrast that with what's been happening with the rest of the population who've seen their taxes rise by £1,100 a year on average.
But let's just look around. You know, the VAT pledge which we did get from the Prime Minister a couple of weeks ago, aren't Labour just thrashing around here for something to scaremonger about? And, you know, the Conservatives have ruled out putting up VAT unequivocally. Now you're landing on this.
Well, I think we're trying to find out what the Conservatives' priorities are. I mean, we know they've set out their trajectory for spending cuts, which go way beyond what's necessary to deal with the deficit. They've got their ideological desire to shrink back public investment. Now, the question is, if it's really tenable that they're going to take the knife to public services that much, I think the public will resist it. And if they're not going to do that, well, that's why we're asking about their alternative tax plans. I'm not sure I believe them on VAT.
Well, you're attacking them on that, but I mean,
the thing
they ask you about, I've got to ask you about it, is national insurance plans. No plans, or absolutely categorically rule out any increase in national insurance?
Absolutely rule it out. Yeah, absolutely. We've said that, and we don't need to do it. The reason we don't need to do it is because we've got a more balanced approach. We're focused on the deficit. They're focused, the Conservatives focused very much more on getting to that excessive, extreme surplus that they want because they have a desire to shrink back public spending. And it's a different strategy now. We believe that we can deal with the deficit through a combination, yes, of some spending cuts, fairer tax changes. That's why we've said,
that's the austerity side of things, the spending cuts.
Well, it's not. I think we don't need to go down the route that the Conservatives have gone. Their cuts are going to be twice as deep over the next 3 years as they've been over the next 5. On page 16 of the Office for Budget Responsibility document in the budget, you'll see the graph is very, very steep. They talked about that roller coaster, if you remember, going over that edge. We don't think that is necessary because we would put that top rate of tax for the very richest back up to 50p.
But, I mean,
I think that's a big contrast now. We know that the Conservatives believe in trickle-down. They think that magically helping the richest
is going to just
percolate down to everybody else.
We've got to bring in the SNP here because a lot of what they're saying on the economy is identical to what you're saying there. You know, why don't you say to Nicola Sturgeon, yes, of course you're going to win some seats, we're going to try and prevent you winning as many as we can, but of course you're going to have a lot of seats there. We could form this anti-austerity alliance.
Well, I'm not sure quite what the SNP are saying. I mean, they say one thing in public, but they say another thing. It appears in minutes. I don't know quite what was going on there, but I think a lot of people are not surprised that, the revelations that perhaps Nicola Sturgeon actually does secretly want a Conservative government. Why do they want that? Well, they'd love to get into a second referendum and look at jeopardising the union in this way. The SNP and the Conservatives, I think, are playing political games with our country's future. What we've got to do is make sure that we protect our public services as best we possibly can.
Nicola Sturgeon says
but also have fairer taxes on the very rich.
Nicola Sturgeon says that.
If she believed that...
I mean, the point is...
Why didn't they vote on it?
Well, you deal with the reality of May the 8th, don't you? You deal with the reality, and if Nicola Sturgeon still keeps saying exactly the same things you're saying, the electorate are going to say, well, why don't you get together in some way, shape or form?
No, we've ruled out a coalition with the SNP.
Well,
and we don't believe...
many other ways.
We don't believe in doing that with them because they believe in totally different things and breaking up the United Kingdom. We don't believe in that. But obviously, I'm hoping we will have a Labour government. We will put our programme before the House of Commons. Even if we can get Liberals, Conservatives, whoever it is to vote for that programme, we'd like them to vote for that. That means getting rid of the bedroom tax. That means putting up that 50p rate. But of course, Nicola Sturgeon and her MPs, they didn't turn up when we had the vote against those Conservative spending plans, that extreme cut of twice the depth that we've seen in the last 5 years. And I don't know why they didn't turn up.
Shadow Chief Secretary, thank you very much indeed. Very good to see you. Chris Leslie there from Labour. Now, coming up, I'm going to be speaking to the Lib Dem